think really the answer is also in your question, because I think that one of the biggest challenges that companies are facing is simply because they are parachuting customer success as an operational function, a new operational function. So I think right from the outset, which is definitely not happening right now, but going forward, this is something which we should improve, I think, is really making sure that, right from the outset, we're thinking not product centric, but we're thinking customer centric. Mm-hmm. So by that, it means that, we're not just designing a product and then throwing it out to the market and hoping for the best, but we're actually designing an outcome from the outset, right? And this outcome that we're designing is something which everything is contributing to. So it's the product design, it's the service design, it's the way we're engaging with the customers. So one of the challenges is that we're still trapped in this mindset of product centricity and coming up with this wonderful idea and kind of doing our go-to-market and hoping for the best, right? Yeah. So I think, first of all, we should be listening to the market, understanding, what are the pain points of the market and our customers, and designing everything in retrospection based on the needs, and everything in kind of retro engineering based on the needs. I think that's one of the first challenges. I think companies, unfortunately, are still working in silos. So all companies, no matter whether it's a 100-year-old company, which obviously has that ingrained in its legacy of working, or whether it's a startup, we tend to work in silos because I think that's the way we're kind of tuned. And I think, even with today's technology, that is reinforced by the fact, each team has its own tool, and there's no kind of communication going on with these tools. So that kind of re-emphasizes the silo working kind of mantra that we have, unfortunately. I think another challenge is really probably a misunderstanding about what customer success is, whether it's customer success as a team, the functional team, but also this kind of non-recognition that customer success is also something which should be ingrained in all the teams. Not having the top-down buy-in to make that happen. I think, a lot of executives just think it's a kind of flash in the pan and just a kind of a nice new buzzword around customer success, customer centricity, whatever we like to call it, and don't realize, the full strategic potential and differentiator that will make for us, in front of our competition. Yeah. And I think another challenge is unfortunate that a lot of customer success teams become the anything and everything departments. It's what our friend Rav Dalival, is a good friend. Yeah. He was famous for coining this phrase, and unfortunately that is true, right? So a lot of the time, customer success becomes a little bit like the Swiss knife for doing everything that the other departments don't want to do or don't have the time to do, right? So I think, that there are a lot of challenges which probably resonate with our listeners here. And the other one, which is what I mentioned, is not knowing how to make that all happen by having equitable objectives, so that each team knows exactly what is their bit to contribute towards creating success for the customers, and what are the limits of their scope, because, there's a lot of the time there's kind of trespassing going on between the different roles, and what is the boundary of what's within my scope. If I'm a salesperson, am I the person who is not going to be responsible for closing, or do I also contribute to some extent to the renewal, right? Yeah. So we need to have those boundaries and the scope of each role, each mission statement very clearly defined. And I think related to that is the fear that, when we're putting into place a customer success organization, particularly at the very beginning, there may be a lot of pushback from the different roles. We often hear of friction going on between sales and customer success because sales think that to some extent, customer success is probably going to threaten to some degree some of their role, some of their responsibilities, probably even take away some of the ownership that they believe to have with the customer, so there's all these kind of psychological things going on. And when in fact, to overcome all that, you need to do a lot of education around what customer success is, which comes back to my first point. Evangelization, making the different roles, like the sales, understand that in fact, it's not a new role which is going to trespass on their territory. On the contrary, it's something which is going to help them do better their job already, right?
Yeah. Should make the closing process much easier if done properly.
Absolutely. And even then, if it's the original sales that is still responsible as well, perhaps for upsell and cross-sell, which is the case in some organizations. Of course, customer success is a great lever for that.
Yep.
To help them to identify new upsells and cross-sells, for example.